Hey, welcome everyone. Today, more than ever, the world needs voices that spark change, ignite hope, and drive transformation. Change doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when individuals choose to step forward, speak up, and take bold action. Whether you're leading a global movement or making a difference in your own community, your voice has power. In this podcast, we aim to amplify those voices, share the journeys of resilience change makers, and inspire each of you to recognize your potential to impact the world. Let's create a ripple effect together. This message taps into the concept of collective empowerment and emphasizes the significance of individual contributions in driving social change. Welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. I am your host, Al Richards, and today, with my lovely guest, Kiralei, we are going to be talking about taking things apart and putting them back together. And I freaking love this topic. I really do believe this is going to be an amazing show. Now, just so you guys know, Kiralei, she is, oh gosh, what did I write down? She is the empowered team architect. And as we get going on with this conversation, I think you guys will understand why. So, Kiralei, thank you so much for taking time out of your morning to be with us.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's crazy because I my version is I feel very strongly about people come into your life for a reason, whether it's a short period of time, mid period, or a long period. And it's crazy. You and I just met almost, I don't know, almost 4 weeks ago at
Yeah.
a chamber event at a First Fridays networking group. And you happened to come to my table and we both shared our little elevator pitch. And it's like that connection within seconds was made. And that's another thing I love about networking and love about meeting other individuals because I don't know about you, but I felt the energy immediately. It's like, oh my gosh, I got to talk to this girl. And then you actually said that before you left when you went to rotate to different tables. Like you and I need to talk. So again, thank you for showing up that day. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's it's weird. So I had to travel, you know, an hour to get there.
Yeah,
So it
you
was
did.
yeah. I mean, just synchronicities for sure. Meant
Yeah,
to be.
absolutely. So to go back to what we're talking about with the topic, taking things apart and putting them back together,
Mm.
what was it that or the reason why you wanted to talk about this topic?
So I mean, a couple different things. I've been okay. So I used to work for the Air Force in logistics and program management. But as a kid, and so now I'm thinking back to when I was 6, I would think about when my dad was taking apart cars, and he complained once. He says, "I spent the entire day. I looked at this piece. I took that piece apart. I cleaned all these things out, and then it still wasn't working." And I thought to myself, "I wonder if it's just a spark plug." He cleaned the spark plug, and everything fixed. I'm 5 or 6. I don't know what a spark plug is, but it stuck in my mind that there are a lot of pieces, a lot of things that can go wrong. You can do all the hard things, but then maybe it's the simple thing. So then, fast forward to uh, a rebellious teenager, and then trying different things as an adult and working with big programs. So I hate saying that. So I led a $4 billion acquisition for the Air Force. All that to say is that when something is big, there are a lot of people involved, a lot of moving pieces. And sometimes it's not the hardest thing, it's the simple things that people say, well, it should be this way. And you keep trying to say, no, it's this way. It's the simplest thing, but it makes the biggest difference when everyone is on the same page. So when I see things true in a personal area of life, and I also see them true in very complex areas of life, I think, okay, is it true throughout? So I'm going to call this the thread of truth. And these things scale. It doesn't matter what your life situation is. It doesn't matter, what kind of role you play in society. It doesn't matter how old you are. If it's true, you're going to see it in so many different areas, which connects us as communities. And that's what, so on a personal level, trying to change the way that I talk about my business to show people, hey, we're not looking for a specific kind of person. These foundational items work for everybody and it can unify us.
Yeah. You know,
I
and
just think
I
it's so
love that. I love, Kiralei, that you put it as the foundation. You know, I grew up playing sports, and as I grew up a little bit more and got older, I really started enjoying golfing, and I watched quite a bit of golf on TV. And so many times have I heard a golfer say at times that when they struggled, they went back to the basics. They went back to the foundation because again, we as humans, we start overanalyzing things, right? We start thinking way too much and we're bypassing it. It's like we're trying to find a rest stop so we can go to the restroom, but we're doing 100 miles an hour trying to find a rest stop and we've already passed 3. Right? I mean, because we're so focused on trying to hurry and get to a rest stop, we're not paying attention to things, the little things that's out there. And
yeah.
it's funny to hear these professional athletes because they say once I went back to the basics, I found what I was struggling with, and that's what excelled my game. And it was something with either the way they was holding the grip of the club, or and a lot of times they have coaches that help them, and a coach can just say, hey, move your hand a little bit this way and the problem's solved. While they're over there trying to work on different things and try different clubs, it was just a matter of moving your hand a different way.
And now we get into that foundational piece that proves it crosses over. If you tried to correct it only by yourself, how long do you think it would take?
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't know. It could take a short period of time. It just depends on how you're looking at it, or it could take a long period of time, right? Because I I really my version is we all need help
Mm-hmm.
all the time,
Mm,
right? There's
yeah.
there's 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 something out there someone can always teach us. Professional athletes, again, going back to professional sports, they all have coaches. Coaches have coaches. Why is that?
So from my own life, if I'm only doing it by myself, I might have a coach, I
Mhm.
might be playing sports, but I might say, well, but I can do this. And so on my own, and I see this in so many different areas, the coach will be able to pay attention. Okay, I'm just going to watch this one thing. I'm just going to watch this one thing. But it's when it's you tend to say, let me change 5 things. And then you don't know what it was that was off. And so when you're looking for, okay, the business term is optimum efficiency. Both things are similar, but when they're together, optimal efficiency means you need to have all the things working in balance and at their best level, not their peak, but at their best level. But when we're making multiple changes at a time and then things work out, just like you said, it's like, I don't know if you're a video gamer, but when you're button mashing, okay, you're not a video game. I won't use that.
Yeah. there's
The
there's a
kid,
reason why I am not.
okay. You can accidentally get to something. You can make a bunch of changes and say, see, it worked, but you're not sure what's optimal. But the coach can look at one piece and one piece and one piece and, get you to do the right thing. So my brain just went to a tricky area. So I'm interested to see what you think about this. Now there's a trick, because now when someone outside of me can help me get what I want, there's that codependency piece, right? It's like it's a test. Can I do this just on my own, or do I always need someone else to help me? Am I delegating some of my personal responsibility to someone else? What do you think about that topic? It can
I
be
would like to
tricky.
touch further into that topic, yeah, because and the reason why is because there's a lot of things that I've done by myself,
Yeah.
right? And really not even knowing the direction to go, just knowing something had to change and putting thought into it. And it's like, I will start here and see which direction it takes me, which the majority of the time it took me to as far as it needed to go. And then I hit that crossroad where I knew I had to go a different direction.
So have you seen people now this is a test. I'm not saying this happens with everyone. I'm saying I've seen it often enough and now I want to know what you think. Have you seen people who are trying to change from one thing to another? They get someone tells them here's the way to go and they do it and they like it, but now every single change they want to make, they go to that person and they're looking for approval. See where I'm going?
Yeah. Yeah.
And but there's a point where that's helpful and then you cross the line and it's not helpful anymore. Do you know what I'm talking about there?
I believe so.
Yeah, so that's the thing, that's a foundational piece that I think people don't always, they're not cued into. It's not I need help until, it's I decide. So I'm getting external inputs and sometimes it flips into I decided to do what so and so said all the time. And now it's delegated. Now it's not I decide, now it's so and so said.
Yeah.
So it seems so helpful when it's at those pieces that are like, I wasn't eating and now I am. But when it goes beyond into, okay, what do I do with my family? Or what do I do with, I'm going to make a huge change in my business? Is it someone else's idea or is it yours? And if we're constantly in the space of, I can't trust myself, I have to trust so and so, then, I don't know that you're quite there yet in being done. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's the thought that's coming into my head with you saying this is we're giving up our own empowerment. That's what I'm hearing.
So the danger space with that is when you don't know that it happened. So it starts to build stress, right? Have you ever worked with someone who you're trying to say, I just want to highlight for you that something you're saying is indicating something unhealthy and you want to be careful. If they take it as in you're trying to tell me what to do, they might automatically put up a wall. But if somehow it's worded in a way that makes them think, oh, I could choose that or that, then they're thinking it through and there's, less resistance. But the
Mhm.
second you become the reason, this is on the early side, right? If you're the reason they're changing, they're just putting up walls. No, I don't want to do that. If they choose something, if you are the reason and they succumb to your powers of, I cared about you enough that I'm going to show you the right thing to do, I'm more powerful than you, and they're like, oh, okay. And then they do your thing, it never stops, right? So now there's pressure on the person who's helping. You always have to be there to help me, and if you're not there to help me, then I can't ever do anything right. I'm going to prove it to you. So now you're trapped. So the uh the therapy term, and I have to be real careful. I have so much respect for the realm of psychology and therapy that I need to say I am not one. But in that realm, it's called codependency, right?
Mhm.
So one of the things I like to say is that it takes two to be codependent. So one person, you start to get in there because you think, oh, so and so needs my help. But then that point comes where someone says, or someone believes, either the helper person or the person asking for help, when someone says, well, if you're not there, I can't do the right thing. And that's codependency. Um,
Yeah.
so we want to help each other and be present, but we want people to know every choice is your choice. And that's a good thing. It's not I could go into a rabbit hole that I'm trying not to go into right now.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying because you know when I got certified to be an international crisis and recovery coach, one of the things that impressed me about this training, which was so much different than other coaching things that I looked at and was somewhat interested in, but then realized it wasn't for me, is and I think you and I spoke about this about a week ago, is that brain first approach. So like if I sit down, when I sit down with a client, we really don't talk about the crisis or the addiction, or whatever it is that they're dealing with. It's basically allowing them to find their own answers just by certain questions. Because then I really, my version is it takes that codependency away, and it takes that I have to count on you being there for me, to where they're calling me for everything, right? They're calling me,
Mhm.
I don't know, the light just turned red and I don't know if I should go or if I should just stay in one spot. I don't know what to do, right? Because it does really, it sounds stupid, but really it does get to that point where we
Mhm.
rely on that so much. However, I was talking with a good friend of mine last night, and I was sharing with him some stuff that's going on in my life. And I love that I have a friend like this, because we're able to say it, tell it like it is, right? And we don't get defensive about it. I respect what he's telling me just as much as he respects what I'm telling him. And we don't get all defensive. We don't get our panties in a wad or anything like that. We stop and we listen. And it really opened my eyes with a lot of things, because I gave him a chance to say what he needed to say, but he wasn't telling me the direction to go. All he was doing was asking me certain questions, and I'm going, I'm being coached right now, because these are questions I would ask somebody, right? However, why am I not asking myself these same questions? So I'm off in left field, and he's helped bringing me right back in again to my alignment. So now I can focus on the direction that I need to go and actually find my own answers.
Hmm. I I'm not jealous. I'm happy for you. I I uh I always use the term, sometimes I need someone to be me to me. And I have people like that, but it's life goes on, you get to be in different time zones, and it gets tough to find them. That's valuable. That's so helpful.
Yeah, very, very helpful. And we don't
Did you
charge one another. I mean, it's
Yeah. Did you find each other on accident, or, I mean,
You
is this a
know,
lifelong
we,
friend?
we became good buddies a little over a year ago, because, and it all started from our Healing Utah Success Summit last October. And he actually came to the event and ended up meeting a lot of the speakers that was there. And he told me about 6 months ago, finally get to a point where I don't get so emotional on it. He said, Al, that event that day saved my life, because he says I was
Wow.
starting to contemplate suicide, because he had nothing. He's by himself, had no friends, no nothing. And I don't know, I just took him under my wing, and I took him hiking, and he just fell in love with hiking. He'd never been hiking before. And that energy and that bond just kept growing closer and closer. And it just got to where it was so automatic. Seriously, it was just something that was so automatic, to where he could come to me and he goes, dude, man, this is what's going on in my life. I don't know what to do, and I'm confused on this. And I could say what I needed to say. And then I'm like, I don't know if I helped you or not. He goes, no, holy cow. Yes, thank you. You really got me thinking about this, and vice versa. So it was another one of those chess pieces God put in front of me to help me along my journey. And I believe I was one of the chess pieces in his game to help him along his journey as well.
we we definitely need each other. And I'm not it's not like you're looking for the magic person. Like, it's all the connections. We all need each other. I don't know. It's the holidays. You got your Christmas tree up still. Um, I was watching an old movie. I don't remember which one. Um, it's not important, but just the fact that someone's car broke down and they needed to go find a phone, right? The whole concept of finding a phone, dropping a dime. That's even older because at some point it was like 25 cents, 35 cents, and so you needed more than just dimes. But uh I don't know that some of your are all your listeners old enough to know what payphones are.
Probably not all of them, but I would think there would be a few. Yeah.
But there's a bunch of things that need to line up. Like you need to have change. You need to know the number in your head. The person needs to be there to pick up the phone at the other side, and then you arrange on how you get help. But we do you remember back to the days when you could just be on the side of the road and someone would stop and pick you up? Some stranger. Oh, do you need some help? And you'd be like, yes, thank you. And then cell phones came around, and would stop at the side of the road. Do you need some help? And they have their cell phone, they wave it, they're like, no, we're fine, go away, serial killer.
Yeah.
And we started to bifurcate. I would go on road trips and literally stop in some town and ask someone, because I didn't know where the next gas station or something would be, and I would actually ask them, can I use your restroom? Like, just walk up to someone's door. I'm just traveling through, can I
Yeah.
use
Use
your
your restroom.
anyone does that to you now, automatic no, no,
Right.
no, 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 no. I'm so sorry, thank you, no. But we've forgotten how to be connected. Those are simple funny things, but now, how do people learn to talk to each other? And it's almost like, I don't know, in the UK, I have never been there, but it boggles my mind that you could be on the same train ride with someone months, years. You recognize them, you see them, but until someone who knows them introduces the both of you, for some reason you do not talk to each other. And it's almost like that now. Like you need some trusted person to say, "Oh yeah, I know so and so," and that's how you trust them. And we've just it's it seems helpful, but we've separated ourselves, because when you need help, who do you ask?
Yeah. Yeah. That's so well put, and it's I have to say, thank goodness for me, I'm like a social butterfly. I love meeting people, and I really count on my energy, right? I really count on, I call it my spiritual contact. There's some people, not a lot, but there are some where I get within 10 feet and there is something that's like, there's something wrong here. This is someone I don't really want to associate with. However, there's others, right, that is that way. And I think what we're also missing too with this is, instead of waiting for other people, like you just mentioned, there was two gals at the gym. They're still at the gym. And it's Tammy and Angie. And they're around my age. And one day I just went up and started talking to them. They're giggling and stuff. And I just went up to them and I said, you guys would get a better workout if you guys would stop sitting here giggling back and forth and really pick up a weight and do something. And they just started laughing, right? And then they started giving me shit. They're like, well, who the hell are you to tell us what we're supposed to do while we're here? And I start laughing. We end up start talking, come to find out, Tammy ends up knowing one of my friends. And this is just
Wow.
somebody at the gym that I just started
Yeah.
talking to, right? And next thing I know, we start jabbing and we start realizing we know a handful of people, and they're our friends. And it's like, Tam even goes, isn't this crazy? This is just ironic. But again, it goes to show what you're saying. If we don't take that step forward, how are we supposed to know?
I love connection.
Yeah.
Because, when we're talking about taking things apart and putting them back together, um, growing up in the 90s, uh, every stranger is dangerous, right? And that only became more as we went along. So it's tricky because we're a community. So there it is true that we need to be watchful and aware. How can we get back to the place of saying, I don't care, what your past experiences are, you're a part of our community. That doesn't mean I'm going to invite you into my home and let you use my restroom
Yeah. Yeah, right.
yet.
Yeah.
But how can we look at people and say, hey, you're a part of our community? And the reason I brought it up like that is, how do I talk about this? Since 2000, I don't know, between 2000 and 2004, I've been thinking about a phrase that a friend of mine said, because she was hanging out with some people that it would have been considered that she was reaching out trying to help people. And she said something really interesting. She says, it's really interesting that when you spend a lot of time with people because you're trying to help them, you start to get labeled with their label. And I've, just been thinking about that through the decades. Is that perhaps why some people don't want to be around others? I respect the fact that you say, you're around someone and you feel a vibe and you're like, yeah, this isn't okay. And other people you're like, yeah, let's hang out. Um, what happens when someone looks at you and you get labeled with someone else's vibe just because you've been around each other, and they've not taken the time to recognize that you're, trying to be helpful? How do you what do you do? What do you do? So the point I'm trying to make is that at some point we need to be able to say, I'm hanging out with so and so because, and I hang out with so and so because. I don't hang out with them, but I recognize they're a part of our society, and I still want good things for them, but I don't want to be around them. Um, how how can we build a society? And this is just a thought project. How can we build a society where we can look at people and say, I don't need to be around you, but you're human, and I wish you the best. How do we build that? What do you
You know, I, my thought of this, Kirley, is going back to changing our own thoughts, right? Changing how we
Yeah.
look at things. And with you saying this example popped up in my head. There's this younger kid at the gym, and he walks around the gym like he's the biggest badass in the gym, and he's usually by himself. And he came up and took a machine that I was using one day, and I said, hey, look, I'm using that machine. And he's like, no, you're not. And he threw my rag on the ground, my towel on the ground. And I says, no, I'm using that. And he goes, no, you're not. You're over there using that. I'm like, yeah, I'm using the two in combination. And I got a little heated. I'm like, hey, learn some gym etiquette. And I'm embarrassed to say, but I think my nerves and got to me that day. And I says, stop being an asshole. Basically is what I said. And I walked away. And anyway, this morning, it's crazy. This happened probably like 3 months ago. And this morning, I'm walking in the gym and he just happens to be going out. And we just made eye contact. And it's like, this is a guy I really don't want to talk to, right? I wouldn't go and hang out with him at the gym and do sets with him. However, the first thing that came in my mind is I said, good morning. And he got this look on his face like, and he's like, good morning. And I just went right past him. And it's like, I'm not going to hang with you, but there's no reason for me to be a freaking asshole to you either. Right. Because I don't know what your life's like. Maybe you're being the way that you are for a reason. I don't know. And this is what training and my past years, 15 years of experience in growing, has gotten me to. Now, I'm still a long ways away, probably from where I need to be. However, I've come a long ways also, right? It's that taking things apart and putting them back together, where I'm putting things back together in a more positive way than a negative way. And I think too many of us dissect things and we put things back together in the negative way, which isn't getting us anywhere. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just kind of using that as an analogy of as a society how we could look at things. I got a good friend too that now just got a membership at the gym, and I've known him through the recovery community, and this is where we met. Ex-gang member, been in prisons, got the tattoos on his face and all this. And you meet this guy, and he is one of the most loving and caring individuals you'll ever meet, which most people in the recovery community are like that, the majority of them. And I had a networking thing it was at, and everyone that came that day was really kind of very distant with him, right? Wouldn't sit by him, really wouldn't carry on a conversation with him due to his appearance. And he even came up to me. He goes, I don't know if I'll come to one of these again because I just feel like I'm being out of place. And I'm like, dude, he goes, you're the only one that would come up and talk to me. And it's like, hey, if they want to lose out on getting to know you, that's their problem, not yours. And again, it's that opening up. And it's hard for us as a society, I think, because society has really molded us to judge one another by their color, their religion. Now it's freaking politics. I mean, we always got to put this freaking label on everyone's forehead before we have an opportunity to get to know who an individual is. And I tell you what, and Kiralei, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you are really in touch with yourself, your own instincts will tell you, right? Us as humans, I mean, I've been out in the woods before when I know another animal's been looking at me because the hair on the back of my neck stands up. Even though I cannot see them, there is something there. My body will tell me I'm either in danger or something's happening. And it does that way whenever you walk into a room, right? If you walk into a room where a couple just got done arguing, you can feel the negativity.
Yeah.
So I think we have to start tapping into our own instincts a little bit instead of being so quick of slapping that label on somebody's forehead. I
And
don't know if
that's,
I'm helping with this or not.
yeah, that's a practice,
Hmm.
right? To recognize that side of yourself. Uh, and we haven't talked about any of that at all. I'm kind of excited that you introduced that. So I do, as a human, I've learned to practice energy work. Um, it's beautiful, because it's a picture of, we if we're talking about taking things apart and putting them back together, um, you're looking at foundational pieces. I've got a screw, I've got a carburetor, I have an air filter, a serpentine belt, and all these things go together. But as humans, it goes down to molecules and light and neurochemicals and energy going through our body, and all of that is put together. I have one body, that when I try and touch something else, I don't magically get stuck to it somehow. um but at the piece parts, they're all so similar. It's all light somehow. So if we can start to think about, how do we put that engine together to do what I want to do? Or, what are the features we haven't paid attention to? So, like you said, you can sense an animal's kind of watching you because you get that sense. Our brain, our mitochondria absorb 11 million bits of information per second, but we only think 40, so a lot less. So our body as an engine has access to features that we don't have to think about. We just kind of become alerted to it. So then how do you how do you consistently start learning about those new features and using them? I don't know why I went there. Why did I go there? You tell me.
Well, again, it's that stepping stone, right? It's that
Um,
practice. I read the book Conscious Creator. I've actually read it twice, and it really helped me to start paying attention to my thoughts. And
mm,
and my version is that's where it starts. We have to start paying attention to our thoughts. What are our thoughts telling us? And it's so crazy because after the first time I read that book, I realized that 90%, if not more, of my thoughts were negative thoughts.
oh wow.
And it's just because of what was going on around me and in my life at the time. And I'm thinking, this is when I was just starting to get into manifestation and positive thinking and stuff. And it's like, no wonder all this bad mojo keeps happening in my life, right? Because
Mhm.
that's what I'm constantly thinking and that's what I'm constantly bringing in. Whether this is a word I do my best not to use as much, but whether you believe in that or not, right? And the reason why I say I don't like using the word believe is because it has the word lie in it. Just because
Mhm.
what I believe and you believe doesn't make me right and you wrong, or you right and me wrong. Again, it's just our belief, but is our belief really the truth? So when I saw that the word with lie was in it, I'm like, that's actually something to think about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so that's why I like to say now my version of it, because again, it's just my version, and my version can be changed. It can definitely be changed, and I'm willing to listen to see if it does fit a change for me in my life at the time.
What you've just said, it's people go two different directions. One, they say, "Oh, you're one of those people," and they stop listening.
Yeah.
Or they say, "Oh, so beliefs are lies." I think that's too far unhelpful as well. So if you can be between both and say, "Oh, that's indicating a lot of things he probably thinks about," and "Oh, maybe it's super true." Now in that middle space, you can say, "Well, let's test it.
Mm.
Let's put out some beliefs and say, in that belief, is there a lie?" Because now we're getting back to piece parts. We're saying, here's my belief, but let's take the different components of that belief apart and say, of these seven things, two of them are lies. Can I take away the two lies and still live with what's left? And now that I've put it back together differently, how does it affect everything else in my life?
Hmm.
So I love that you brought that up, because sometimes even just moving from one city to another, or moving across the country in the same country, or moving from one country to another, you start to, even from one city to another, you have to have a different track. Where do I go grocery shopping? Who do I run into the gym at now, because it's a new gym, new people? uh, you have the opportunity to take out some things from your life that weren't actually helpful or you didn't actually like.
Yeah.
So, in my beliefs, can I identify small lies that sour the belief? But even just for some people, the concept that I believe something and there's a lie in it, they don't want to look at it. So they just kind of put up all these blinders. But if you can be brave enough to say, if I find a lie, I don't want to keep it anyway, right?
Hmm.
But
Oh, and oh no, go ahead, finish, please.
you got to be the one to decide.
Yeah.
If anyone pushes you into it, then they also have to be the one who tells you which ones the lies are. That's hard.
Yeah, it is. And I think something that really holds us back, and I'd like to know what your thoughts are on this, is so many times with whatever it is that we believe, we don't allow ourselves to keep the open mind. we allow our ego to step in and shut everything down. And for me, a lot of my growth, and I'm not saying I've mastered it by all means, because ego is very powerful. I still find many times throughout the day, throughout the week, where my ego kicks in, right? However, I've gotten more of the tools to recognize it now to know, okay, no, get back here. I'm not going to allow you to get in front of me anymore like you used to. I I I feel that we allow our ego to step in too much and keep us caught in those lies because of how we want to see who we are or how we see ourselves as individuals. And I've had people, which I've shared on my show many times, I've had people say, may I speak openly? And when you give someone permission to speak openly, and now I use that term, right? May I speak openly? However, because if I give somebody that permission, I'm allowing them to throw at me whatever it is that they want to throw at me. I've gotten to the point to where I'm getting more calloused at it to where instead of getting blistered and allow my ego to kick in, I'm allowing myself to hear what they have to say. Because I tell you what, a few people that I've listened to that I've allowed to open up, especially like my friend Joe, who I was talking about, it has helped me in my growth so much, which that's why I was so stuck in my lying, manipulating ways the majority of my life up until 15 years ago, because it was my ego. My ego was keeping me there that whole time. Because how dare someone talk to me that way? How dare someone tell me this is what I need to be looking at? Right? I mean, try putting something together without instructions if you're doing it for the very first time. You know, I mean, they're there to help you in your journey, right?
Come
I
here.
mean, look at it that way. They're there to help you in that journey instead of having going, oh, well, shit, I'm a dude. I got this, right? I know how to do this shit and throw the instructions away. And then you're sitting there putting things together and realize you put it together wrong just to take it apart to put it back together again. And
Yeah.
anyway, so what are your thoughts on that with the ego?
So, and I'll come back to ego, but I'll
Okay.
I'll be kind and say it's not just dudes that do that with instructions. Like you buy the IKEA furniture and you're like, I could put this together, only to realize that at the very beginning you have to do this one special thing first so that it all gets together. And they're like, why won't this work? So it's not just dudes.
Good
But
to
the
know.
ego, so is your are your listeners when they hear the word ego, do they think about a piece of themselves or do they think about uh an influence?
That's a good question. That I don't know. I'm not able to answer that one.
Okay. Because there's a con I'm gonna introduce this because I haven't fully thought it through, but I find it really helpful. Someone referred to the ego as a pet. And you think about like dogs really want to, they want to make sure that you're happy and they're listening to you if they're able to. And cats are their own they're their own thing. You might tell them, come here, go there, but ultimately they've got their own mind. It doesn't matter what kind of pet you have. If you're the kind of owner that cares about your pet, you realize, oh, they've got a mind of their own, or oh, they're not very smart, um, or oh, yeah, they're going to cause problems, so let me put these gates up. But you're not doing it to make them different. You're doing that because you realize the personality that they have and you care about them as the pet carer. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So I'm beginning to think about the ego as a pet. If I understand, okay, this is the personality you have, there are some things that I will rearrange in my life because of my pet's personality. But there are some things that my pet is just going to have to deal with it. I'm just going to go to work. I have to. You know what I'm saying? So you don't make every decision because of your pet. but you recognize that you love your pet. And some people do not think about their ego that way. They don't think about their ego with care. They think about their ego as, how can I ignore you? Which, that's not great for a pet.
Mm-hmm.
And how can I change you? Which, at some point there is some pet training you can do, but if it's a cat, there's very limited amount of pet training you can do. Um, but I mean, what do you think when I talk about the ego that way?
It's very interesting because some thoughts was coming to mind when you said that, because our ego is also a good way. It's something that also protects us,
Yeah.
and the way that I was putting it is being careful with the ego, which yes, I definitely, again, my version is we got to pay attention to it. I'm seeing ego as two different personalities. There's the good ego, the bad ego, or let's say the uncomfortable ego, or however you want to put it. Because we do have to have a certain amount of ego to also get us to other places that we need to be.
Yes.
Right. So where I am in my journey and where I see my vision, especially coming up on a new year, I've really been sitting down thinking, okay, what is it? What is it that I want to work towards this year? What can I do better than I did that I didn't do so good at in 2024? What can I escalate up to the next level? And you have to have some type of ego in that, right? To hold yourself in the right way, to get to that certain point. So that ego can also be your strength. It could definitely be that coach. However, you have to really pay attention to it because it can also be your downfall.
The words are almost there. Oh, it's so close. The word, you know what I'm saying? So ego as a coach, I love, because if you view ego as a coach, it's trying to bring something to the forefront of your mind. Pay attention to this. Pay attention to this. Um, I spend time with a group of friends, and it seems like in that group, the point is to bring attention to the things that you've been weak in. So, we can go through life on our strengths and never pay attention to our weaknesses. And I've, made my life a lot about, the things that I'm really good at. So it's so difficult to realize I'm at a master's level in these skills and a third grader in these. So ego as a coach, and this is what I'm feeling in my group, is that the light is on my third grader skills, which is embarrassing. Um, but ego as a coach saying, I want to be balanced. I want you, the human, the living person, to be balanced. So, here's this thing. You didn't address it. Here's the evidence. And you're like, I don't want to pay attention to you, ego. But I guess coming back to use my analogy, because I don't want to get too far down the road, is ego as a pet or ego as a part of yourself. So I think it's a if we can conceive of seeing ego as both, it's ego is a part of me. And if I'm also seeing ego as a pet and I just need to ignore you, I'm ignoring a piece of myself. And let's take it down the road of children. If a child needs attention or believe that they need or want attention, and they're not getting it, they'll become more drastic to bring attention to, I wanted attention. You might say, well, later, and they might be satisfied with that until they can't anymore. And then they're big and you got to pay attention to me again. I think our ego does the same thing. And if we can respect the fact that what comes up doesn't need to be hidden, doesn't need to be overpowered, but just needs attention, like that can be really useful.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very useful. And again, ego is a very tricky one.
Yeah.
I have found that it is very, very tricky to move around into those spots, right? Because you're hitting the nail on the head, Kiralei, because there's so many different areas where it can step in to help, where it can step in to do damage, where it can step in to help grow you, to help putting things back together again, right? And it's that paying attention again. I guess it goes back into that thought, your thoughts patterns of where am I taking this? Is it something that's going to be helpful or is it something that's going to be damaging? And unfortunately for me in my past, my ego was more damaging to myself as well as to others, not realizing how bad I was hurting others because of my ego, which in turn was turning around and hurting me as in my growth and as an individual and as how I was looked at in society. So it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. And I know there's books out there to help with that. However, also it's a lot of work inside here within. I mean, is that how you see it? It's a lot of personal work.
It is. It needs to be. Because if it's not personal work, if it's about putting yourself through a program and exiting like a Stepford wife, um, there is a benefit to it. There's a use for it, but I don't think it's a benefit to you in the full capacity of what you're able to do. So it's got to be personal work, which means it'll be messy
Mm.
sometimes. It could be frustrating. It could be embarrassing, but just consider that it could also be super joyful and really fulfilling. These are all human traits, right? And why should you need to ignore any human trait, including anger or sadness? I think that things become more in the extreme when they've been labeled as bad. When I just want to label them as human, express it in its reactionary form so that you don't have to see it in its like full blown I've been ignored form. So and that's, not everybody agrees on that, but I believe that as a human trait, even things like anger can be useful.
Yeah.
In its extreme forms, it gets distorted. But anger is not something to be afraid of. It's a human trait. Being disrespected, it's not something to be afraid of. It's a human trait. Um, Forgiving, it's not soft. It's a human trait. So
Yeah. Well, again, I've said this on many shows. It's God has given us it. I mean, that's who I see as my higher power is God. God has given us all these emotions for a reason. And society has seemed to have figured out a way or mold us into we are not allowed to have our emotions. We're not allowed to show our emotions. And because if you do, then you're looked at as being weak. And I think there's a shift that's starting to happen where more people are starting to realize that's not a weakness, right? And you talked about bad. A lot of things going back, right? Taking things apart, which I look at what I've said so many times of connecting the dots backwards. And a matter of fact, I was just talking with some friends a week ago about this. How many times have you gone back and looked at something that was just so terrible in your life that further down the road ended up that bad thing was ended up being the best thing for you. And I made the comment, a lot of times God closes doors on you for a reason. When you're getting that closed door, it's like walking up to a house and talking with somebody and they slam the door in your face. It pisses you off, right? It's like, how dare you freaking do that? Going back to the ego. However, and then as time goes, as you start thinking of what the lesson behind it was, all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, if that wouldn't have happened, that wouldn't put me right here where I'm at today, which I really like where I'm at right now. So again, being willing to accept. I just had someone on Christmas tell me the same thing. You know, it's like you think, or I can't remember how it was put. Like I'm not allowed to say what my feelings are, or feel my feelings. It's no, no. You have every damn right to feel your feelings. Who am I to say that you're not? Feel them. That's what they're there for. However, don't let it empower you. Don't let it take over your life to where 6 months down the road you're still feeling that same feeling.
Yeah. How do people take that advice? Like, does it feel like to them, oh, finally someone else said the same thing, or do they fight you?
This individual fights.
Okay.
Yeah, this individual will fight it all the way through. And I know this person well enough. I know it's because of their past,
Yeah.
things that's happened in their past. They still have not been able to figure out a way to leave that in the past. They continue to tow it with them everywhere they go, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes the chain is shorter, sometimes the chain is longer. However, it's still following them.
Do I don't know how to put this, and this is, on recording, so I'm not trying to call you out. Um, is it okay that they live their life that way?
Yeah, it is. And it hurts, right? It still
Yeah.
hurts to see that. However, it's like I was telling my buddy last night on the phone. It's like I have no control over it because it doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter if I paint the prettiest picture on this paper and hold it up and go, see how pretty it is? This is what you could
Yeah.
do. None of that matters. So,
So
yes.
there are two things that I like. They're able to speak their piece. You're able to speak your piece. And when they refuse to change, you say it's still okay that they do that.
Mhm.
Those are the two things that I really like. Both being able to say their piece, and in the end, they can choose what they're going to do. Now, in the aftermath, you still want what's better for them, and it hurts you. So now for them, it's the signaling, right? Um, we've had this conversation. You're letting me do what I want, but I still see that you think I should be doing something else. It's that signaling of I've not what's the right word? You disapprove, So it's that I still see that you want me to go in a different direction, and it's an invitation for them to put up a wall. So now it's a battle of wills. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely.
So my invitation to you is to look at that place in yourself that says, it hurts me to see them be less than they could be, and see maybe what your ego is trying to bring attention to. Because uh, it's a magical place. I don't know how else to describe it, but to be able to look at someone else in their choices, they're not harming themselves, but they're not helping themselves, and I can see better for them. But to have that freedom of emotion, I guess, to not feel that icky place inside of me when I see what they've chosen. Because when I see what they've chosen and I feel that ick, um, I mean, this is so much smaller than, being addicted to meth, right? It's so much smaller, but it's still an opportunity in this human engine to find optimal, because feeling icky when you're seeing someone you care about and the way they live their life is not optimal for your system. And that's such a bigger topic that we can't, I don't
Yeah.
know if we
We could look at doing another show down the road on that because I think
really.
that would be a
Okay.
great show. Yeah. In all honesty, I really do. Because I had something happen to me a little over a year ago that really put me in that ickiness. It's
Mm.
like I felt like I was there for this individual, and I felt like I threw out all kinds of love and still being who I was and still growing at who I was at the time too, and still learning things, and to just basically be shoved under a rug like I was nothing in the first place put me in a pretty bad spot in my life for, gosh, almost about 6 weeks. Seriously, I was like in a freaking slump. I was a zombie for about 6 weeks. Going back to actually putting things back together, I allowed myself to go through those emotions. I mean, seriously, after about a couple of weeks, I'm like, I'm sick of this crap. Why am I not able to shake it? And I just had to keep telling myself, I got to allow it to take its course. I got to allow it to take its course. I also kept telling myself, don't allow myself to get stuck there. Do not stay there for a long period of time. And it's funny, I don't know, after about 6 weeks, one day I woke up and is like, huh, okay, it's gone. Now what's the lesson behind it? What did I learn from all this? So I think again that would be an amazing show. So we'll get in contact after. We'll figure out another time to come on and talk about it because I love talking about topics like this.
Hmm.
And the hour has gone by so freaking fast. I
I
mean, we
know.
probably got into this an hour and it feels like it's only been a half hour. And I wanted to ask you this too before we sign off because I could talk to you another hour on this, but I do have a meeting to get to. Um, I love your motto. I really do. When I saw your motto when you sent your information over, I'm like, I freaking love this because your motto is teaching people to teach people to teach people.
Yeah.
Now, we're not all teachable, right? Not all of us are teachable because again, I think go back to the ego, that ego, because I grew up in a household where you did not tell my dad anything because my dad already knew, right? He was completely out of whatever any kind of change because this is how it is. This is the way it's always been. This is what's got me through life. There is no such thing of this over here. And I grew up doing that until I went through all my stuff to realize, oh, look at all these other options out here. It's like walking into a mall. Look at all the choices I have, right? So I think this whole conversation that we've had today is going off your motto, Kiralei, about teaching people to teach people because ooh, my emotions kicked in. If it wasn't for certain individuals to help me along my journey, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And it goes back to at the beginning of the show where we talked about, is it good to have a coach? Is it good to always rely on that coach? Or is it also good to have that coach, but also to start getting the tools to help realize we also have certain tools within us to where if I really need the help, if I'm in quicksand and I need a rope, I know someone that can hand me a rope. Or am I just stuck in some really deep mud and I can figure out a way to get myself out of the mud?
So, um, I'm 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 gonna find the short way to talk about this.
Okay.
So, teaching people to teach people to teach people for me is a way to counter the old workplace adage that you want to be indispensable. As I considered that as a young person, I thought to myself that there's a trap there because if I'm indispensable, if you cannot do this without me, I can also not be promoted. And so I started to think this is not a good perception. And in life, I started to see more things where people were they found help through someone, but now they're tied to them, they're reliant on them, um, and that became harmful over time for more reasons. So teaching people to teach people to teach people is teaching people to be very skillful, very ambitious, and yet not put shackles on other people to stay in their roles. Does that make sense?
Oh,
So
absolutely. Yeah.
so coming back to our conversation, that's why I'm so big on what are the foundational pieces, because if I can teach others to teach others to teach others, then we're not creating a cascade of people who are um, reliant and or encaptured by each other, codependent, so to say. But everyone is able to build their own engine or rebuild their own carburetor. I don't rebuild carburetors, so I don't know why I did that. But
You're going to be getting a lot of calls on how to rebuild carburetors.
Google so and so.
Yeah.
But that's what I want to help people do. So if you know the foundational pieces, you can become an inventor. And what I do is as a coach, I invent for, the premium clients. I will invent a coaching program to get you to your goals. But ultimately, in every area, I'm very careful to say, do you really understand this to the place that you have the language to talk it through or can teach it to someone else without creating a dependency on them? So wanting that connection between people still, not creating people to be completely islands to themselves, but to know the difference between it's helpful until, because good skills can sour when they go too far, but we're not taught that. So
Yeah.
that's my big thing.
And I really do love that. And here's the reason why is when I went through my training, when I first met my coaches out of Canada, which was they've been a guest a couple times on the show. They actually came to Salt Lake to launch our Healing Utah Success Summit. Dave and Susan Kenny with Emergo Academy. Their whole goal of coaching about the brain first approach is to do exactly what your motto is, teaching people to teach people to teach people. Their goal is to teach as many people as they can in the way they feel is very productive and very healthy, so those people can teach other people to teach what they taught us, that we taught someone else to teach someone else to teach someone else, to continue to grow that ball. Right, it's just like rolling that snowball. The more you roll it around the snow, the bigger and the bigger it gets. And so yeah. And I think we also have to be careful too, is that term, really quick to go back, all throughout being a kid in the sports, I was told by certain coaches and things like that, is practice makes perfect. Practice
Mhm.
makes perfect. The more you practice, the better you're going to get. And then, and I understood that as a young kid, right? And I was always practicing because I wanted to get better. I see my grandson practice soccer all the time because he's just, gosh, soccer is his life. However, up until way in my adulthood, I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was a Tony Robbins. I don't know. But they says, does practice really make perfect? Because what if someone's teaching you to practice the wrong way?
Mhm.
Right? There's a right way of doing something, there's a wrong way. It's like when I was learning how to play baseball, I was a bench warmer my first year. That was the only time I ever sat on the bench, was my first year, because I worked my ass off all throughout before the next ball season. My dad was out in the field throwing fly balls up in the air and teaching me how to hold my mitt, right? If he was practicing teaching me to hold my mitt a different way, I'd still be sitting on the bench. So again, kind of going back to
Yeah.
that concept too, does practice really make it perfect? Well, it can, but it can also be in a negative. way instead of a positive way.
Mm. So practice makes permanent. And what really matters
Mm,
is the skill reliable?
yeah.
Tough. That's a tough one
Hmm.
because you can, yeah, you can really ingrain yourself in something that's not getting you to the top levels. Wow.
Yeah, my daughter was a good example. When she was into dance as a young girl up into her adulthood, my ex called me and said, "Hey, she's not really advancing."
Mm.
It's like, they practice a lot. She's at practice 3, 4 times a week for 2, 3 hours at each time, and she's not advancing. So I found a different place, and I'd like to know if you'd be willing to pitch in the extra money so we could have her go here. And I agreed to it because I wanted my daughter to also advance. And it's amazing how far she excelled within just a matter of 6 months. It's like,
That's
holy
awesome.
cow. In 6 months period, she went from dark to light.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's kind of that same concept. Well,
That,
anyway,
man.
something to throw out there
Yeah.
for people to
It's
think about.
exciting. Yeah. I love it. I love talking to you, Al. I look forward to it.
Well, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, really, to have you on the show and this whole conversation. Again, I could sit down here with you for another hour, if not two, and talk about things like this because it's my growth, right? This is my therapy. Seriously, it is because there are things that you've said that's really got my wheels turning also on some things. And just our conversation, the little oh my gosh, little exercise you and I went through just a few days ago,
Yeah.
right? When you said,
Yeah.
"Hey, do you mind if I try this on you?" And it's like, "No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Let's do it." And it's got my wheels turning and I really feel the reason why all this is happening because I've got some things going on in my life right now where I've really got to align everything, right? And that was another conversation my buddy Joe and I was having last night about he can tell I'm in a spot right now that I don't want to be. He can tell from my energy and my voice over the phone. He knows there's something going on. And it's how do I work through this, right? How do I maneuver my way through this in a selfish way? In the selfish way of I've got to look out for me and I got to protect myself where I've gotten myself, right? I can't go backwards anymore.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
have the time. None of us have the time. Just so our listeners know, I want to throw this out there because this is something that Joe and I talked about yesterday. None of us have the time. And when I say I don't have the time, I'm 61 years young. My goal is to live to 100 plus. However, God could snuff me out as soon as I leave this house to go to my meeting. We don't have time. None of us have the time. I don't care if you're in your teenage years. I don't care if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s. I don't care if you're in your freaking 80s. We don't have the time. We have to do what we can to make our lives the most happiest lives we can possibly do with all the shit balls life's going to throw at us. We got to figure out how to wipe ourselves off, clean ourselves up, pick ourselves up, figure out the lesson, and move on to the next one and continue to do that because again we cannot sit back and wait for everything to come to us because it's not going to happen. We got to go after it.
That is potent. Like I feel the activation in me.
Oh,
Go get it, Al. Whatever it is
get
you're
it,
gonna do, go get it. And
go
I
get
like I
it.
feel it in me too. I'm gonna go. So you guys listening, go get it
Yeah, well,
now.
how many of us okay, let's go back to this since I'm single, right? And we'll hurry and wrap this up because I got to be at a meeting in about a half hour. um I'm single. I've dated here and there, and it's like we're out there looking for this perfect one, right? And there isn't such a thing. How many of us are bypassing amazing connection with an individual because we're so busy hanging on to our past? or we're so
Mhm.
busy waiting for that perfect one to show up when really it goes back to that thing that I heard years ago where there's this flood and there's this priest and he's in the church and they're like, priest, you need to leave. It's like, no, God will protect me. Flood waters keep going up and he goes up to the second floor and somebody's coming by and it's like, priest, you need to leave. No, God will protect me. Pretty soon he's standing on the roof of the church. A boat comes by. It's like, let us help you. No, God will protect me. Right. Another boat shows up. No, God will protect me. A helicopter. No, God will protect me. Before he knows it, he's standing in front of the pearly gates. He's like, God, I don't understand. I don't understand. You were there I was counting on you to protect me. And he's like, well, I sent you two boats and a helicopter. So we miss so many things in our life because of what we are hanging on to, waiting when really it's been being sent to you how many times? And because you're so stuck, you're letting so many amazing things that could be happening in your life bypass you. And maybe it's not the right person. However, it could be that lesson, that person to give you a lesson to help excel you to that next level to where you actually do. Because, and the reason why I'm saying this, I was out there looking for just to try to find somebody as quick as possible, right? I've always fallen out of one relationship into another one very, very quickly. This time it hasn't happened. And I've really had to stop myself and go, there's a reason for this. What was my lessons learned from all these other ones? And I made a comment to someone. I jumped over the fence thinking the grass was greener, and I landed in a bunch of dog crap or cow manure, right? So maybe it's time I walk the fence for a little while and wait till I actually find the gate. However, keep that open mind as well, right? Look at everything that's coming into your life and that's coming into alignment. So those are my final thoughts. What are your final thoughts, Kiralei?
My final thoughts?
Yeah, with what we
Uh,
spoke about today.
yeah, my final thoughts are if if you if you can find the small pieces that you understand how they work, just see what else it touches and just let your education grow from there. You don't need to understand the biggest things. Just start with what you do know and allow yourself to be surprised by the extra connections that are there. So, but
Love it.
yeah, you got a great podcast here.
Thank you, my dear. And again, thank you for your time. I really, really do appreciate it. And let's get together again. I'd love to have you come back on. I love the conversation. I love the knowledge that you have to share out there and even the thought behind everything. It's just, I think it's something amazing. And I've even forgot what we talked about having you come back on for a show. So hopefully you remember because
I remember.
okay, good, because I would really love to use that as a topic to discuss. I think it would be very helpful for our listeners, as well as
Great.
myself.
I love it. I love it. Eager.
Eager. There we go. All right, my dear. Thank you very much. Hey, thank you to all our listeners. And gosh, I keep forgetting to say this at the beginning of the show, but I just want to say thank you to White Tree Medical in Sandy. They are actually coming in as one of our sponsors. You guys will be hearing a little bit more about them. I'm just waiting for some material to come in so I can properly introduce them and what they do. So again, I just want to say thank you to White Tree Medical. Very, very great bunch of people who really care about individuals, and anybody that cares about other individuals and the well-being of them is somebody I'm a big fan of. So again, thank you to all you listeners, all our guests. You guys are the ones that are making this all possible. We're going to leave you with this as we do at the end of every show. Remember, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.